Hey everybody, it's time for another pro wrestling series review. This is my WCW from 1998 through 2001 pay-per-view series review. This is a remade version. There was one from earlier this year of a incomplete WCW Bash at the Beach 2000 review. The reason I decided to do this because at the time when I did the first one, I couldn't find all of the WCW 2000 pay-per-views because the website I went to watch them on, all of the pay-per-views were removed. Then I managed to find a new website that has a lot of classic uploaded pay-per-views from various companies like WCW, ECW, and Classic Impact Wrestling. So I decided to retitle. I'll finish that other Bash at the Beach one, but this is the brand new intro to the brand new series I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be doing webcam and narration picture versions. So yeah, both the links to the previous and past versions will be in the description box below. Some of my favorites will have multiple reviews, one with every match on it, and some with some of my favorite and best matches from the card. So, with that being said, let's get started right now. Let's go back in time to when wrestling was great. part of my WCW in 2000 pay-per-view review series. This is the big Natural Born Thrillers storyline and era of WCW. This era, and the next era I'm about to talk about. This era right here reminds me of the ECW style, the ECW wrestling promotion, and I also consider this era of WCW to be the best, and this is the era that should have happened in 1999 when you still had 1999 or 8, when you still had the ratings win and ratings war, or your ratings were still high over WWE. Yeah, like I said, this was the big Natural Born Thriller storyline. Even though the first pay-per-view I'm going to talk about is called New Blood Rising, the New Blood storyline had been completely abolished by this point. It ended when Hogan and Bischoff parted ways with WCW at Bash at the Beach 2000, when Hogan was fired and Bischoff left after that anyway, because he couldn't work with Vince Russo. Yeah, Vince Russo from July all the way up until October of that year 2000 would take over as head writer of creator, and would be on screen the solo main bad guy, would feud with top stars Booker T, Goldberg, and quote unquote Flair, in a similar attitude era like storyline they did with Austin, Rock, and the McMahons. So this era right here was this era was the best, and this era had Booker T, Goldberg, Steiner, Jeff Jarrett, Sting, Diamond Dallas Page, Kevin Nash as the the Natural Born Thrillers, Big Vito's big singles push, Johnny the Bull Stimpoli, and Billy Kidman, Lance Storm, and them as basically top stars during this period. Especially, let's talk briefly about Lance Storm. Lance Storm briefly became the most important character in WCW, winning every title, the tag team titles, the Cruiserweight Championship, and United States Championship, and kept renaming them all. He won nearly every title except for the big one, the heavyweight title, falling to Booker T. Then you have the Natural Born Thrillers. You hear about the Nexus storyline WWE did a decade after this, but here's WCW did it in 2000, and they did it much better, where they had a bunch of rookies, a bunch of power plant guys immediately come from the power plant with Mike Sanders as their mouthpiece and occasional wrestler, and immediately began feuding with the top stars and established stars of WCW. You saw a similar thing with the previous storyline, the New Blood versus Millionaires Club feud. You hear about Nexus. You hear about the Nexus storyline, but here's WCW did it better several years earlier. Then you had Big Vito, who had these old school circus jobber style tights with no tight singlets, singlet with no shorts part at the bottom, underwear circus style of singlet, boots, the signature cap street people wear, the cap street people wear, and the jacket with the kendo stick as a top babyface, feuding with both the Thrillers, Steiner, and of course later his storyline brother, Natural Born Thriller star Renault, who I forgot to mention. Yeah, that was the other Natural Born Thriller star who I keep forgetting to mention. Yeah, Natural Born Thrillers were were the late Sean O'Hare, Mark Jindrak, Chuck Palumbo, my boy Sean Stasiak, and of course Renault. Johnny the Bully Stromboli was briefly with them, but they quickly turned on him, and he would later take some time off at WCW and reform his tag team with reform the Mama Lukes with Big Vito. Big Vito. Also during this time, the Hugh Morris of the Misfits in Action would feud heavily with Lance Storm's Team Canada stable. Also, Mike Awesome, the late Mike Awesome, will receive a monster push at this time as he would get rid of his career killer gimmick in favor of a fat chick thriller gimmick, which is infamous, but yeah, he made it work, and I enjoyed him as a top. He could have been a top babyface star, but they turned him heel and later put him in a storyline with Lance, put him in a stable, Team Canada stable with quote unquote Lance Storm. So yeah, around this time, another thing I didn't like was Vampiro. Vampiro around this time was severely misutilized. He reformed his tag team with the Insane Clown Posse and started teaming with the Great Muta, which was cool. But I felt by this point Vampiro had outgrown them and became a big star in his own right, and outgrown them, and so he should have been one of WCW's top stars, and then he got a concussion, which his final match would be at Halloween Havoc in 2000, and we would never see him again because by the time he returned, WCW would be purchased by WWE. Scott Steiner. This was Scott Steiner at his best. Scott Steiner from 98 to 2001, 2, and 3, followed by 6 and 8 were Scott Steiner, Big Papa Pump at his best. But 1998 through 2001 and 2, that was Scott Steiner's best. When he came to WWE, Scott Steiner was just washed up. He wasn't the same Scott Steiner. Here, this was Scott Steiner. Uncontrollable, uncensored, violent as hell. Scott Steiner as a character, I hated him. But I admired his do what I want, do what the F I want attitude, regardless of law and order, which occasionally spilled over into real life. He was complete loose cannon at this point. He was awesome during this period. Scott Steiner Brothers are an awesome tag team, but I much prefer them as single stars. And Rick Steiner was awesome, beast in the mid card during this period, beast in the quote unquote mid card, and Scott Steiner and his feud with Booker T, which was their version of Rock, Triple H, and Stone Cold, with Steiner playing both Stone Cold and Triple H at the period. And these guys had me believing wrestling was quote unquote real. I believed this. I believed everything in this feud right here. So yeah, so much awesome stuff during this period of WCW. Well, anyway, let's get to the event. Let's get to the events itself. The first was New Blood Rising. This was one of the weaker pay-per-views of WCW 2000, but I've always been a huge fan of this pay-per-view. I remember seeing this pay-per-view back when it aired. I was 10 years old when I saw this pay-per-view. About to turn 11. I was 10 years old, about to turn 11, and it was an awesome pay-per-view, and I enjoyed the pay-per-view then, and I still enjoy the pay-per-view several years later. The show started off with 3 count. Shannon Moore, Shane Helms, the 3 count. Evan Courageous, Shannon Moore, and Shane Helms with Tank Abbott defeating the Young Dragons of Kaz Hayashi, Jamie Sung, and Young Yang in a gold record ladder match. I love 3 count and the Young Dragons and Big Vito and Johnny the Bull Snimboli. These guys had their own Dudley Boys, Edge and Christian, Hardy Boy, TLC style ladder matches. And these three teams I just mentioned were better workers, better wrestlers than those three iconic teams of Edge and Christian, the Hardy Boys, and the Dudley Boys. But I think those three teams I just mentioned were far bigger stars than any of these people were. But these guys were better wrestlers, and in my opinion, probably better characters too. That's one reason I always chose WCW over WWE. Better wrestlers, workers, and characters, and storylines, in my opinion. The Ernest the Cat Miller defeating Great Muta, Buff Bagwell defeating Kane in a infamous Judy Bagwell on a forklift match. The Chronic Brian Adams and Brian Clark defeating the Perfect Event, Sean Stasiak and Chuck Palumbo, Sean O'Hare, Mark Jindrak, and the Misfits in Action, General Erection and Corporal Cajun in a Four Corners match for the WCW Tag Team Championships with the Filthy Animals as special guest referees. Billy Kidman defeated Shane Douglas with Torrie Wilson in a strap match. And Major Guns defeated Miss Hancock in a mud rip off the clothes match, which I remember this feud but don't remember this match right here. Sting defeated the Demon quickly. I remember him defeating him, and I remember him being this quick in 52 seconds. Lance Storm defeated Mike Awesome in a Canadian Rules for the WCW United States Championship match, where Lance Storm kept changing the rules in his favor and would finally win the WCW United States Championship. I remember Bret Hart returning to WCW at this event to congratulate Lance Storm. As a kid, I thought he was going to beat up Lance Storm. The Dark Carnival, Vampiro and the Great Muta defeated Chronic Brian Adams and Brian Clark for the Tag Team Championships. Kevin Nash, in a triple threat match, Kevin Nash defeated Goldberg and Scott Steiner in an infamous triple threat match where before the match they started doing some work shoot stuff where Kevin Nash said, well, he's gonna go over. This is one of those terrible work shoot moments where they try to do the, so you're trying to tell me this right here was real, but everything they did before this was fake. Get out of here. But as a kid, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. For some odd reason, Goldberg, according to the thing, he didn't show up till midway during the match, and then midway during the match, Goldberg says, "Screw this, F this," and decided just to walk out. And Kevin Nash later beat Scott Steiner to win this match right here. Then the main event, the singles match, the Bash at the Beach 2000 rematch between Booker T and Jeff Jarrett. Another good match, not as good as their Bash at the Beach match or even their televised match they had before this, but another good match nonetheless for the World Heavyweight Championship. So one of the weaker and goofier pay-per-views of WCW 2000, but still entertaining. Now for the much superior Fall Brawl 2000, widely considered one of the best shows of all time. Various wrestling critics have rated this as one of the better shows WCW had in the 2000s. The most famous I know is the Wrestling Round Table. Well, anyway, the opener, you had Elix Skipper with Major Guns defeating Kwee in a Kwee, Al Funk in a singles match for the Cruiserweight Championship. Next is the Misfits in Action. Corporal Cajun, Lieutenant Loco, and Sergeant AWOL defeated 3 Count Shannon Moore, Evan Courageous, and Shane Helms in a six-person tag team match. The Harris Brothers, Ron and Don, defeated Chronic, Brian Adams, and Brian Clark in a First Blood chain match. Lance Storm with Major Gunn defeated General Erection in a singles match for the United States Championship with Jim Duncan as a special guest enforcer. The Filthy Animals, Disco, Rey Mysterio Jr., Juventud Guerrero, and Conan and Tigress, Big Vito and Paul Orndorff fought the Natural Born Thrillers, Mark Jindrak, Sean O'Hara, Mike Sanders, Chuck Palumbo, Sean Stasiak, Renault, and Johnny the Bull to a no contest in the biggest and most memorable match from this card, because the late great Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful, he competed in this match and suffered a brutal Stinger style of injury. I think it was kayfabe in this match though, but I remember this was the longest and most exciting match ever. This is the most memorable match from this card right here. Shane Douglas and Torrie Wilson defeated Billy Kidman and Medusa scaffold match. Sting defeated the Great Muta and Vampiro with Violent J and Shaggy Tulip of the Insane Clown Posse in a pretty good triple threat match. Mike Awesome defeated Jeff Jarrett in a memorable bunkhouse brawl match where one of the big football, where were they? The Buffalo Bills football team was the Buffalo Bills football team was in attendance in Jeff Jarrett's match, and were in the babyface Mike Awesome's corner. Then Scott Steiner defeated Goldberg and won by a technical submission in a no disqualification match in one of the more memorable matches. And I was heavily rooting for Goldberg and was shocked and angered that he fell to Steiner that night. And this would begin Steiner's streak where he would beat up and violently end careers of various wrestlers until one wrestler returned and dethroned him for his title. Booker T defeated Kevin Nash in a caged heat match for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship in an awesome main event. One of Kevin Nash's better matches. Actually, a lot of his better matches took place during this WCW 1996-2001 time period. So yeah, that was Fall Brawl, one of the greatest pay-per-views ever. Halloween Havoc 2000. This pay-per-view is widely considered one of the worst pay-per-views WCW's ever put on. It won Wrestling Observer's worst pay-per-view, worst major show of 2000, not just WCW but 2000. But I only saw this show once as a kid and didn't see it again until around 2000. See the show in its entirety till around 2012 or 18 when I finally got to watch this show again. I think it was either 2012 or 18 where I finally got to see this show again. Well, anyway, this show is far from the worst show. It's actually one of the best shows. The only problem I would have with this show is that the whole thing feels like a 3-hour nitro than a WCW pay-per-view. You had the opener, the Natural Born Thrillers, Mark Jindrak, Sean O'Hare defeating the Filthy Animals, defeating the Filthy Animals, Billy Kidman and Rey Mysterio Jr. with Conan and the Boogie Nights, Disco Inferno and Alex Wright in a three-way dance for the WCW Tag Team Championships. That was an awesome opener. Renault defeated Sergeant AWOL in an awesome hardcore match for the Hardcore Championship. The Misfits in Action Lieutenant Loco Corporate Cajun defeated the Perfect Event, Sean Stasiak and Chuck Palumbo in another phenomenal tag team match. Filthy Animals, Conan and Tigress defeated Shane Douglas and Tori Wilson in a good mixed tag team match. Buff Bagwell defeated David Flair in a cheesy but entertaining First Blood DNA match where they were doing a storyline where David Flair was running where Stacy Keibler was pregnant, and so David Flair was trying to find the father, and David Flair went around attacking random people trying to make them bleed so he could find their DNA. Yeah, that's what this was about. Mike Sanders with Sean Stasiak and Chuck Palumbo defeating Ernest the Cat Miller with Miss Jones by knockout in a kickboxing match. This was awesome, but something that probably should have been on Nitro. But this was awesome right here. Mike Awesome defeated Vampiro in what will be Vampiro's last match in WCW. Was shocking. Notice Vampiro wrestled this match with a concussion. But yeah, this will be Vampiro's last appearance. General Erection defeated Lance Storm with Jim Duggan and Major Guns to win the United States. Win the United States Championships or retain. Can't remember, did he win here at the last pay-per-view? I can't remember. 9 is Jeff Jarrett defeated Sting in a match where in a no disqualification match match where a bunch of Stings, one of them being portrayed by the Wildcat Chris Harris. Then Booker T defeated Scott Steiner with Malaysia by disqualification in your first WCW World Heavyweight Championship match. I remember being excited Booker T beat Steiner, but I hated the way he beat him. It was by disqualification, saying Booker T couldn't beat Steiner. Booker T couldn't beat Steiner, so they were gonna have the rematch at the next pay-per-view, which was quote unquote Mayhem 2010. 11 was Goldberg defeated Chronic, Brian Adams, and Brian Clark in a pretty good handicap match for the handicap elimination match with Goldberg's career on the line. Great match, but it should not have been the main event of a pay-per-view. This right here makes this event feel more like a Nitro than a WCW pay-per-view itself. But I thought this was another awesome pay-per-view from WCW, way better than most people give it credit for. Most of the reviews on here from WWE Sheep are just dogging this. Now it's time for the final It's time for your first and your final pay-per-views of 2000. This right here, WCW Mayhem 2000, in my opinion, is one of the greatest shows WCW has ever produced, and one of my all-time favorite pay-per-views. I remember watching it as a kid. I enjoyed it as a kid, and I still like it, and love it several years later, man. Several years later. You started the show off with Mike Sanders defeating Wwe with Paisley singles match for the Cruiserweight Championship. Then you had 3 count. Shane Helms, Shane Moore defeating Evan Courageous, Jamie Noble, and the Jun Dragons, Kasayashi and Yun Yang with Leia Mayao. Mancow with Al Roker, the Freak, Jim Jesus, the Turd, and the Bartender defeating Jimmy Hart, which is a match I do not remember. I remember the first two. To this day, I do not remember Mancow and Jimmy Hart's feud. To this day, I still don't. And I loved and watched this pay-per-view. To this day, I still remember this feud. Then you have Crowbar defeating Big Vito and Reno in an awesome hardcore triple threat hardcore match for the WCW Hardcore Championship, where a woman representing Renault gets involved and prevents Vito from caning the crap out of Renault. The Filthy Animals, Billy Kidman, Rey Mysterio Jr. with Tigress defeated Chronic, Brian Adams, and Alex Wright and Disco in a handicap match. Ernest the Cat Miller with Miss Jones defeated Shane Douglas, and with Tori Wilson. Bama Bigelow defeated Sergeant AWOL, with Bigelow this time wrestling as the heel and AWOL wrestling as the babyface. Early this year, these roles were reversed. It sucks that both of these guys are dead now. Next is General Erection defeated Lance Storm with Major Guns for the United States Championship. Jeff Jarrett defeated Buff Bagwell. The Insiders, Diamond Dallas Page and Kevin Nash defeated Perfect Event, Chuck Palumbo, and Sean Stasiak for the World Tag Team Championships. Goldberg defeated Lex Luger. Had Goldberg lost, he would have been forced to leave WCW. Love this match as a kid, and still do today, because this was a match between two of the biggest and strongest people in WCW at the time. And I actually believe Lex Luger, at his age, was still a threat to Goldberg. Then you had Scott Steiner with Malaysia defeating Booker T by technical knockout, much to my anger and sadness. I remember going to school mad, crying the next day because my champion, Booker T, fell to Scott Steiner. But this was an awesome straight jacket match where at multiple points in the match, Scott Steiner wrestled like a babyface. He even had a brief Hulkamania based moment in Booker T. There were moments where he wrestled like a heel, doing anything in his power to take down Scott Steiner. An awesome storyline told. And sad to say, this will be Booker T lost here because he got injured. Here. This will be the last time we see Booker T until towards the end of WCW. Scott Steiner would then claim Booker T claimed Booker T's championship, and claimed Booker T as one of his many victims. Before this, he had already beat Goldberg. He had already beat and took out Goldberg. Then he took out Sting on a pay-per-view before this. Then he would take out Sid. Then Kevin Nash. Then DDP. Then DDP, and Booker T would then return to defeat and dethrone him for the title and take it with him to WWE. And that's a storyline for another day. Let's continue with the next pay-per-view, Starrcade. This is one of the weaker pay-per-views of 2000 because, well, with Booker T injured, that kind of put a damp in your main event. That kind of put a hammer and a nail in your main event scene. So, Sid Vicious. One good thing was Sid Vicious, who was supposed to take WCW to the Millennium, he briefly returned. He feuded with Scott. He feuded with Scott Steiner, and they tore the house down in a solid main event for the World Heavyweight Championship. The undercard was actually better than the main event itself, especially the opening ladder match. Three-way ladder match between 3 count. The Shane Helms and Shannon Moore taking on the Jung Dragons, Kaz Hayashi, and Yan and Yang with Leia Miao, and Evan Courageous, and the newly christened Jamie Noble. This is the most memorable match from this card. Then you add Lance Storm with Eva Skipper defeating Ernest the Cat Miller in a pretty good match. Terry Funk defeating Crowbar for the Hardcore Championship. Big Vito and Renault with Big Vito and Marie taking on Chronic, and this ended in a no contest with when Renault turned on Big Vito. Then you had Mike Awesome defeating Bam Bam Bigelow. Bigelow in an ambulance match. General Erection defeating Shane Douglas by disqualification for United States Championship match. The Harris brothers, Don and Ron Harris, and Jeff Jarrett defeating the Filthy Animals, Billy Kidman, Conan, Rey Mysterio Jr. with Tigress. The Insiders, Diamond Ellis Page and Kevin Nash defeating the Perfect Event, Chuck Palumbo and Sean Stasiak for the Tag Team Championships. Goldberg defeating Lex Luger in a no-holds barred match. Had Goldberg lost, he would have been forced to leave WCW. I think Buff Bagwell turned on Goldberg in this match. I can't remember, did he turn on Goldberg here, or was it on a Nitro or Thunder before this? I can't remember, but yeah, this is where Buff Bagwell would also begin his heel turn during this point, which I am to this day mixed about. I felt Buff Bagwell could have been one of your top babyface stars and could have been a challenger for Scott Steiner's title, but him turning heel did make sense when I get to the next part of this video right here. Well, this ends WCW 2000. The WCW 2000, the final part of the third part of WCW 2000. Now the final part of 2000, which is 2001, January 2001 through March of 2001. This will be the fourth and final part. So if you want to hear the rest of the music, turn the video off right now.